Over the past 2 decades, al-Shabab has been responsible for dozens of devastating attacks across the East African region, claiming hundreds of lives. Here's CGTN's Robert Nagila with a timeline of major attacks by the group based in Somalia.
Designated a foreign terrorist organization in 2008 by the U.S. State Department, al-Shabab is the most potent terror group in East Africa. In July 2010, it carried out multiple suicide bombings in Uganda's capital, Kampala, in the first major attack outside Somalia, killing 74 people. In September 2013, the group attacked a mall in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, killing 67 people. 9 months later, in May 2014, al-Shabab claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing in Djibouti city, injuring several foreign nationals. A year later, in April 2015, al-Shabab militants killed 148 students at Garissa University in northern Kenya. On October 15, 2017, the group carried out Somalia's deadliest terror attack in Mogadishu using truck bombs. More than 500 people were killed. In January 2019, 14 people were killed after the group attacked a luxury hotel in Nairobi. In a daring raid in January 2020, the group attacked a military base in Kenya housing U.S. troops, killing 3 U.S. personnel. In April 2022, the African Union, UN Security Council and Somalia's government replaced AMISOM peacekeeping mission with a transition mission known as ATMIS. Later the same month, hundreds of al-Shabab fighters crossed into eastern Ethiopia but were eventually pushed back by Ethiopian forces. In October 2022, double-car bombings outside the Education Ministry in Mogadishu claimed at least 120 lives. The attack came amid a major counter-insurgency campaign by the new Somali government. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
We're now joined by our correspondent Mohamud Kahir live in Mogadishu for more updates. Mohamud, the heads of states are already there in Mogadishu. Can you tell us more?
Well, there's several rounds of mortars that hit near the presidential palace today in the morning as the Somali leaders were trying to gear up to welcome leaders from the frontline states, neighboring Somalia, that are Kenyan, Ethiopia and Djibouti leaders who are already now in the country and holding a meeting. Those 4 rounds of mortar shells that were fired by the armed group al-Shabab was meant to disrupt this significant meeting by Somalia and its neighbors, who already have troops here in Somalia to discuss top on the agenda about security and ongoing offensive against al-Shabab. But there was precautions that was taken by Somali security agencies starting from late last night, where all roads, major roads here in the capital Mogadishu was shut down, movement of traffic, and sometimes the people were restricted to try and cause that to hold this meeting successfully. The defense ministers and army chiefs from from these countries had a preliminary meeting yesterday, and today, as the leaders from the region here are holding this meeting, we are expecting a communique to be issued at the end of the meeting later this afternoon, whereby the already existing security partnership between these countries will be strengthened. And the focus here is fighting al-Shabab, which is already facing a lot of pressure from Somali security agencies backed by the African Union peacekeeping missions. And they are attempting to cross into the neighboring states. And this is why these leaders are here, and to, have their partnership and strengthen their military cooperation and security cooperation with Somalia's government.
Mohamud, you mentioned the defense ministers from Kenya, Djibouti, Ethiopia and Somalia have already held preliminary talks. What has come out of that meeting?
Well, that meeting was a two-part meeting. Yesterday, the defense ministers and army chiefs from these four countries had a preliminary meeting to discuss this security cooperation and how they can cooperate on an ongoing fight against al-Shabab, which was launched 7 months ago. Today now, some few minutes ago, the leaders from this country, including President Tutu of Kenya, Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, and Ismail Omar Gelle of Djibouti have arrived, and they are currently conducting their meeting, and we are expecting at the end of today there will be a joint communique issued by these leaders concerning what they agreed on the security meeting they held.
All right, Mohamud Kahir live for us in Mogadishu. Thank you. Let's broaden this discussion and bring in Ibrahim Mukhtar, security and foreign policy analyst, joining us via Zoom from Nairobi. So, Ibrahim, there appears to be heightened activity geared towards fighting al-Shabab. We know recently, for instance, a big meeting of clerics in Somalia took place and they vowed to counter al-Shabab. Now we have the defense ministers in the region, as well as that expected meeting of heads of state. Where are we seeing these intensified efforts now?
Thank you for having me. We first need to understand that this problem with al-Shabab has not only national implications, but also regional and global implications. And every supporter of Somalia, every country, every organization supporting Somalia is on board to make sure that the group is exterminated. And the preparations have begun previously before this administration, but they have picked up with a clear strategy to defeat the group, not only in terms of military power, but also in terms of defeating them financially and militarily.
So, despite previous counter-terrorism efforts, al-Shabab has proven it's highly resilient and able to strike with some level of impunity. Why?
Al-Shabab, you have to understand, it's the most lethal terrorist group in Africa. It's also the most wealthiest, and it rules by terror and also by exploiting the clan divisions and other animosities. Also exploiting the government weakness and inability to provide basic services and justice. And this is why the current strategy to defeat the group is not only military oriented, but to include this, the financial part, the ideological part. And this explains actually why the Somali government has convened, hundreds of scholars from Somalia and from the diaspora of different, ideological orientations to come and convene and have a common say and have a common stance against al-Shabab. And so far, it has been welcomed and generally considered to be conservative, and any unified stance by the scholars means that the war against al-Shabab will get will get more support and will limit al-Shabab's capability to recruit people based on their crooked ideological understanding.
All right, thank you very much for this insight. Ibrahim Mukhtar joining us via Zoom from Nairobi.